Courage isn't gendered, it's earned. We often picture courage through familiar images: the soldier in combat gear, the firefighter in smoke, the doctor in a crisis. But strip away the uniforms, the ranks, and the roles, and what's left is not about man or woman. It's about choice. The decision to step forward when it would be easier, safer, and far more comfortable to stay back. Courage has never belonged to one gender, one uniform, or one background. It belongs to those who decide that fear will not define what happens next. For too long, courage has been boxed in by perception. We've been told stories of valor that almost always looked the same: a man facing danger, a man making the sacrifice, a man carrying the weight. Those stories matter, but they are not the whole truth. The world has seen countless moments of courage that didn't make it into the textbooks or documentaries. A medic dragging a wounded soldier to safety under fire, a pilot landing in a storm, a mother holding her family together through loss, a student standing up to injustice in a classroom. These are all acts of courage, stripped of category, measured only by willpower and resolve. When they refused to let her board the Black Hawk, they didn't doubt her courage. They doubted her place in that space. They assumed that courage looks a certain way: tall, broad, male. But courage doesn't care about who fits the mold. It doesn't care about the size of your boots or the sound of your voice. It's something internal, almost invisible, until the moment it has to show itself. When she stood there, holding her ground, she was showing a kind of courage that's harder to spot because it doesn't come with noise or drama. It's quiet. It's steady. It's earned. True courage is not about absence of fear. It's about mastery over it. That mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's built over years of training, repetition, mistakes, and moments of doubt. Every person who's ever worn a patch, a badge, or even just a dream on their sleeve knows that courage is a discipline. You train for it. You condition your mind and your body to respond when instinct tells you to freeze. You fail, you learn, and somewhere along that path, fear stops being your controller and becomes your companion, something you carry but never surrender to. When she adjusted her sleeve and revealed her patch, it wasn't a display of pride. It was proof of earned courage. That patch represented every early morning, every grueling mission, every obstacle she'd had to fight just to stand in that landing zone. It was a symbol of work, not privilege, of commitment, not permission. The colonel saw it and recognized not her gender, but her grit. Because in the military, in life, in any high-stakes world, the only thing that truly speaks is what you've done, not who you are on paper. There's a subtle kind of courage that doesn't get parades or medals. It's the courage of being underestimated and showing up anyway. The courage of walking into a room where no one expects you to belong. The courage of keeping composure when you're told you can't, shouldn't, or won't. That courage doesn't explode, it builds. It's the reason barriers fall. Every time someone like her steps into that rotor wash and refuses to step back, the world gets forced to redefine what courage looks like. Earning courage isn't about proving yourself once. It's about showing up again and again when no one's watching. It's the repetition of resilience. Courage isn't loud. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just standing still when everything around you is chaos. Sometimes it's saying, "I can," in a place that expects, "I can't." Those moments don't make headlines, but they make character. Courage, real courage, doesn't seek validation. It's not waiting for someone to say you're brave. It just acts. And the act itself is what earns respect. When she stood her ground that morning, she didn't demand acceptance. She embodied it. She reminded everyone watching that courage doesn't come from being allowed. It comes from being ready. The truth is, courage never needed permission. It's not a gender trait or a birthright. It's something anyone can build if they're willing to face discomfort, to step into uncertainty, and to risk failure. It doesn't care if you wear a patch or a tie, a uniform or plain clothes. The foundation is always the same: belief in purpose stronger than the pull of fear. And when that belief meets preparation, courage becomes more than an instinct. It becomes identity. That's what the colonel saw when he looked at her. Not defiance, not novelty. He saw the earned steadiness of someone who had faced the same tests he had and refused to break. Courage, in that moment, had no face, no gender, no label. It was simply present, undeniable, and real. Respect follows competence, not titles. In every organization, from the military to the boardroom, there are two kinds of authority: the kind that's printed on a nameplate and the kind that's earned through action. The first can be given overnight. The second takes time. Titles open doors, but competence keeps them open. You can be introduced with rank, but the room only listens when you've proven you know what you're doing. Respect, the real kind, isn't handed out because of status. It's built when people see consistency, skill, and integrity that don't need to be advertised. When she was stopped at the Black Hawk, the crew chief wasn't questioning her rank. He was questioning her ability to belong in that environment. To him, her presence didn't fit the picture of competence he'd been conditioned to expect. In that moment, all she had was her experience and her record, the invisible weight of what she had already done. And when the colonel caught sight of her patch, he understood. He recognized competence, not because of a speech or an introduction, but because symbols of achievement speak in a language everyone in that field understands. One look told him everything he needed to know about her capability, and in that instant, respect shifted. Competence has a gravity of its own. It draws attention quietly but powerfully. You don't have to demand acknowledgement when your work speaks for itself. In a world full of people chasing recognition, those who focus on mastering their craft inevitably rise above. It's not charisma that earns trust, it's credibility. People might follow a title for a while, but they'll stay loyal only to those who know what they're doing. And competence isn't just about technical skill. It's about how you carry yourself when things go wrong. It's about precision under pressure and calm when the plan falls apart. The reason competence earns respect is simple. It creates reliability. Everyone wants to know who they can count on when things get difficult. Titles can't guarantee that. Training can start it, but only repetition and performance under real pressure can confirm it. The people who consistently deliver, who can be trusted with responsibility and high stakes, naturally command respect without asking for it. That's what separates leadership from authority. Leadership doesn't rest on the badge. It rests on what you do when no one is watching. Competence is not about perfection. It's about progression, about caring enough to keep getting better, even after success. The people most respected in any field aren't the loudest or the most decorated. They're the ones who quietly outperform expectations and elevate those around them. They make others better through example, not through command. When you see someone handle a task that others avoid, or solve a problem under pressure with precision and clarity, you respect them automatically. It's instinctive, because competence reassures us that excellence is possible. There's also a deeper layer to it. Competence builds confidence, and confidence breeds respect. Not arrogance, but the calm certainty that comes from preparation and mastery. When she walked toward that aircraft, she wasn't trying to prove a point. She was ready because she had done the work. Every hour of training, every mission, every obstacle had shaped her into someone whose competence spoke louder than any introduction. When others hesitated, she didn't. That kind of readiness is unmistakable. It doesn't need to shout. It simply shows up, and people notice. Respect is the byproduct of credibility earned over time. You can't fake it. People can sense when skill is real and when it's not. You can wear the right uniform, use the right jargon, and still lack the respect that comes from proven ability. And in contrast, someone with no formal title but deep experience can command a room with a few words because everyone knows they've been through it. That's why competence cuts through hierarchy. It doesn't need permission to lead. It leads by example. In any environment where stakes are high, combat, crisis, or even corporate chaos, people instinctively gravitate toward competence. When chaos hits, no one cares about your title. They care about whether you can solve the problem, stabilize the situation, and make the right calls. That's when respect aligns with performance. The loudest person in the room might fade, but the most capable person becomes the anchor everyone looks to. Earning respect through competence requires more than technical skill. It takes discipline, humility, and consistency. It's about showing up prepared, listening when you don't know, and delivering when it counts. It's about letting your results speak, even when words could win you quick approval. And that's the hardest part, resisting the urge to demand respect before you've earned it. Those who truly know their worth don't have to announce it. They just perform, and the world adjusts around them. When the colonel gave the nod that allowed her to board, it wasn't charity. It was recognition. It was one professional acknowledging another. He saw in her what competence always reveals, a person who's done the work, who knows their role, and who will not falter when the pressure hits. That kind of recognition carries more weight than any title ever could. Because at the end of the day, titles might introduce you, but competence will define you. Symbols carry stories, we're yours with purpose. Every patch, badge, medal, or mark we carry means something, or at least it should. These symbols are not decorations. They are histories condensed into a single shape or color. They represent nights without sleep, moments of doubt, choices that changed lives, and the weight of responsibility that never really leaves. When someone wears a symbol, they are not just displaying affiliation. They are carrying a story that was earned through effort, endurance, and sacrifice. The problem begins when people forget that meaning and start treating symbols as ornaments instead of evidence. When she stood on that landing zone and the colonel saw her patch, it wasn't just a piece of fabric that changed his mind. It was everything that patch stood for. It told him about her training, her experience, her commitment, and her belonging to a community that demanded respect. He didn't need to ask for explanations. The patch spoke for her. In one instant, it bridged the gap between doubt and recognition. That's what symbols do when they are worn with purpose. They tell stories without words. They connect people through shared understanding, and they remind everyone watching of what was earned to wear them. In every field, military, academic, professional, or personal, symbols have always shaped identity. A uniform, a company logo, a graduation stole, or even a nameplate, each carries weight. They are shorthand for reputation, but they also come with responsibility. The moment you put on a symbol that others recognize, you represent more than yourself. You become part of a story that existed before you and will continue after you. That's why the way you carry it matters. You either add to its value or weaken it by your actions. A symbol can open doors or close them, depending on whether you live up to what it stands for. Wearing a symbol with purpose means understanding the story behind it. It means remembering the struggle, the discipline, the sacrifices that gave it meaning. It's not about pride in appearance. It's about pride in principle. When people forget the story, the symbol becomes hollow. You can tell when someone wears it only for status. The weight is missing. There's no conviction in their stance, no respect in their tone. But when someone truly understands the story they're part of, the symbol comes alive again. It becomes a living connection to everyone who's ever earned it before. Symbols also evolve through action. Every time someone like her steps forward and represents that patch with courage, competence, and integrity, the meaning of that symbol deepens. It gains new layers, new relevance. Over time, what once represented a small group or a single mission starts to stand for something larger: equality, resilience, unity. That's how traditions grow stronger, not by keeping them untouched, but by letting them expand through honorable action. A symbol's power lies in how people carry it into new battles, new environments, and new challenges. But the reverse is just as true. When a symbol is worn carelessly or used for personal gain, it loses its integrity. It stops inspiring and starts dividing. That's why purpose is so important. To wear a symbol with purpose is to treat it as a contract between you and those who came before, between you and those who will follow. It's a promise to uphold standards, to protect the meaning that others bled for, to remember that the right to wear it was not freely given. It was earned, and that means it must be honored every day. Symbols also serve as silent motivators. On the hardest days, when fatigue sets in and doubt starts to creep in, that patch or emblem becomes more than fabric or metal. It becomes a reminder. It tells you why you started, who you're representing, and what you refuse to give up on. Purpose flows through that memory. It strengthens resolve. It turns ordinary moments into commitments. That's the invisible power of a symbol carried with conviction. It doesn't just speak to others, it speaks to you. Wearing a symbol with purpose also means recognizing its story isn't yours alone. It's collective. It carries the fingerprints of everyone who helped you get there. Mentors, teammates, friends who pushed you through the worst days. Every stitch, every stripe, every star carries traces of those unseen efforts. To understand that is to carry humility alongside pride. It's not just, I earned this, but we built this. That mindset is what keeps symbols sacred rather than self-centered. In that moment on the airfield, her patch became more than proof. It became a bridge between worlds. Between what people assumed and what was real. Between the limits others imposed and the truth of what she'd accomplished. That's the ultimate function of a symbol, to cut through doubt and tell the truth about experience. It doesn't argue, it reveals. And when worn with purpose, it doesn't just tell your story, it keeps the entire story alive. Moments of doubt test our worth more than success does. Anyone can stand tall when the outcome is certain, when the crowd is cheering, and when everything is going right. But when silence replaces applause, when confidence shakes, and when no one is there to reassure you, that's when the real measure of character appears. Doubt is not an enemy, it's a mirror. It reflects what you're made of, what you believe about yourself, and whether your purpose is strong enough to hold under pressure. Success might reveal what you've achieved, but doubt reveals who you are. When she was stopped at the Black Hawk, that pause wasn't just a logistical delay, it was a test. It was a moment when everything she had worked for was questioned in a single gesture. That's what doubt feels like, a wall built in seconds that takes everything inside you to push through. You can have the skills, the training, the proof, but in the face of doubt, all of that feels fragile. And yet, that's the moment that defines you. Not the ceremony, not the recognition, but the second you choose to stand your ground instead of stepping back. Moments of doubt strip away the surface. They remove the comfort of validation and force you to rely on your own sense of worth. You find out whether your confidence is borrowed from others or built by your own effort. For many, doubt feels like failure in disguise, but it's really a test of endurance. It asks, how much do you trust what you've built? How much does your belief depend on someone else's approval? The people who grow through doubt are the ones who understand that uncertainty doesn't erase capability. It only challenges the strength of conviction. Doubt has a way of making even the most accomplished person question everything. It whispers that maybe you don't belong, maybe you're not ready, maybe you're not as capable as you thought. It's subtle, but it's powerful. The key is not to silence it completely, but to understand it. Doubt shows up when you're on the edge of growth. It's the signal that you're stepping into territory that demands more from you. When you learn to face it, you realize it's not there to stop you. It's there to sharpen you. In high-pressure environments, whether in battlefields, hospitals, or boardrooms, doubt is a constant companion. It doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from within. You can be surrounded by people who believe in you and still question yourself. That's why internal strength matters more than external validation. The world might recognize your accomplishments, but only you know the battles it took to earn them. In those quiet moments before action, when your pulse quickens and your thoughts race, the only thing that steadies you is remembering the hours, the training, the failures, and the recovery. That memory of persistence becomes your anchor. What makes doubt such a powerful teacher is its ability to expose what's real. When everything goes wrong, when plans fail, and when mistakes surface, there's nowhere to hide behind appearances. That's when authenticity takes over. You see who you truly are, not the version you present, but the version that fights to keep going. Those moments reveal resilience that comfort could never build. Every person who has achieved something meaningful carries a collection of moments where they almost quit, but didn't. Those were the turning points that shaped them far more than the victories ever could. There's also another truth about doubt. It humbles you. It reminds you that certainty can breed complacency. When you've been tested by doubt, you stop taking success for granted. You approach challenges with quiet confidence instead of arrogance. You listen more, prepare more, and lead with empathy because you've been on the edge of insecurity yourself. The strongest people aren't the ones who never doubted. They're the ones who learn to move forward despite it. Doubt doesn't make them weaker. It keeps them sharp, aware, and grounded. When she stood there being told she couldn't board, she had every reason to feel doubt creeping in. Not because she wasn't qualified, but because she was made to question her right to belong. But she didn't let that doubt define her. She let it test her resolve. She let it remind her of every step she'd taken to earn her place. That's what turning doubt into strength looks like. Not denial, but acknowledgement followed by action. Doubt says, prove it. And courage answers, watch me. Moments of doubt are where growth begins. They break down illusion and rebuild belief. They remind us that worth isn't measured by what others allow us to do, but by what we continue to do even when the world hesitates to see it. Doubt isn't the end of confidence. It's the forge where real confidence is made. It's the space between rejection and recognition, between uncertainty and mastery, between almost quitting and quietly continuing. It's where identity hardens and self-trust takes root. Leadership begins when others hesitate. It's easy to lead when everything is clear, when the plan is laid out, and when the risk feels minimal. But true leadership shows itself in the pause, that fragile second when uncertainty takes over and everyone waits for someone else to act. That's the moment that separates title holders from leaders. Leadership isn't about commanding attention. It's about earning trust by stepping forward when hesitation freezes the group. It's the instinct to move when silence settles, to make the first decision when no one else dares, and to carry the weight that others would rather avoid. When she stood at the edge of the landing zone, the hesitation wasn't hers. It belonged to everyone else. The crew chief hesitated, the protocol hesitated, even the system hesitated to accept her presence there. Leadership began when she didn't. She didn't argue or retreat. She simply stood ready. That's what leadership looks like in its purest form, calm defiance against hesitation. It doesn't need approval or announcement. It just acts with purpose because the mission matters more than the perception. Hesitation is natural. It's the body's instinct to protect, the mind's way of buying time. But in moments that count, hesitation spreads like a shadow. If no one breaks it, it becomes paralysis. Leadership begins when someone decides that action, even uncertain action, is better than standing still. That decision doesn't always come from rank or experience. Sometimes it comes from the person who understands the urgency before anyone else does. Leadership, then, is less about position and more about presence, being fully aware of what needs to happen and having the courage to initiate it. Every leader faces that moment when moving forward feels risky, when the outcome isn't guaranteed, and when hesitation would be easier. But that's also the moment that defines credibility. The people watching don't remember the plan you described or the speech you gave. They remember whether you stepped up when it mattered. Leadership begins in motion, not when you're certain, but when you're willing to move without it. It's not about being fearless. It's about choosing action even when fear is in the room with you. In the field, hesitation can cost lives. In life, it can cost opportunity. The principle remains the same. Progress belongs to the one who acts. That doesn't mean being reckless. It means being ready. True leaders are those who have prepared enough to trust their instincts, who can read the moment and respond with clarity. They don't wait for the perfect timing or total consensus. They make the call, accept the consequences, and adjust along the way. That's the kind of leadership that people follow because it feels steady in chaos. When others hesitate, they're often waiting for proof that it's safe to move. Leadership provides that proof through example. It tells people, we can do this, not by words but by movement. The first step forward creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. That's how hesitation breaks. One person acts, and suddenly the silence shifts. Others follow, not because they were told to, but because they've seen what conviction looks like. Every great team, unit, or community thrives because someone is willing to make that first move. Leadership also means responsibility for the hesitation of others. It's not about blaming them for it, but understanding it, recognizing fear, uncertainty, or lack of clarity and replacing it with direction. The best leaders don't shame hesitation, they absorb it. They create an environment where people feel safe to move because they know someone capable is leading the way. That's why leadership is exhausting at times. It's not just about carrying your own weight. It's about carrying the collective hesitation of everyone who depends on you. In that moment before she was allowed to board, she could have stepped back, justified it as someone else's call, and no one would have blamed her. But leadership isn't about permission, it's about conviction. Her quiet readiness sent a message louder than protest. It showed that she was there for the mission, not the approval. And when the colonel saw that, when he recognized the intent behind her composure, he didn't just allow her on board. He acknowledged her leadership. Because true leaders don't always speak. Sometimes they simply stand, unshaken, while everyone else decides whether to follow. Leadership begins at the intersection of hesitation and purpose. It's where risk meets resolve. It's not limited to those with command. It belongs to anyone willing to shoulder uncertainty and move forward anyway. Whether in combat, crisis, or ordinary life, leadership is defined not by how loud you are when things are easy, but by how steady you are when things are unclear. The first to act often becomes the one others depend on. And while not everyone is born into leadership, everyone faces moments where it's required. Moments where hesitation needs to be broken, and someone has to decide that progress can't wait. One act of recognition can rewrite an entire narrative. Sometimes it doesn't take a medal, a speech, or a grand gesture to change everything. Just a moment of acknowledgement. Recognition is powerful because it validates effort that has gone unseen. It restores balance where doubt and dismissal have taken root. It says, I see you. I see what you've done, and it matters. For people who have had to fight to prove their place, that simple act can undo years of silence. Recognition, when genuine, doesn't just honor one person, it shifts perception for everyone watching. When the colonel saw her patch, he didn't just see a uniform. He saw proof. Proof that she had earned her place, that her experience was real, that her capability wasn't up for debate. That look of understanding, the nod, the unspoken respect, was a turning point. In that instant, the story changed. Moments earlier, she had been seen as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in that space. But with one act of recognition, she became what she had always been, an equal. It wasn't the patch that changed the situation. It was the recognition of what that patch represented. Recognition has the power to rewrite narratives because it validates truth. Every person carries a story that others might overlook or misinterpret. People make assumptions based on appearance, position, or bias, but recognition cuts through all of that. It doesn't ask for explanations. It listens to what has already been proven. When someone finally acknowledges the effort, the struggle, the quiet excellence that has gone unnoticed, something shifts. Not just for the one being recognized, but for everyone who witnesses it. The entire narrative evolves from exclusion to belonging, from question to respect. The absence of recognition can distort stories. It can make people doubt themselves, wonder if their work has meaning, or if their sacrifices matter. In contrast, a single moment of acknowledgement can reignite purpose. It reminds people why they started and assures them that what they've done has not disappeared into the void. In environments where hard work is expected but rarely acknowledged, recognition is oxygen. It keeps morale alive. It turns endurance into pride. That's why good leaders don't underestimate the impact of recognition, because they know it sustains the human side of excellence. Recognition is not about reward, it's about respect. Rewards fade, but respect leaves a mark. The kind of recognition that changes a narrative is the one rooted in understanding, not ceremony. It's the colonel seeing her patch and instantly realizing what it took to earn it. No announcement, no applause, just clarity. That's the kind of recognition that lasts because it's not performative. It's real. And real recognition doesn't need witnesses to be meaningful. It carries its own quiet dignity. There's also a deeper ripple effect. When one person is recognized for what they truly deserve, it challenges every unseen bias that kept them invisible. It forces others to reconsider their assumptions, to look again and think differently. Recognition becomes a corrective act, one that doesn't just honor the individual but reshapes the system around them. Every time recognition breaks through prejudice or oversight, it opens a door for those who will come after. The story of "she didn't belong" becomes "she set the standard." That's how progress begins, with one acknowledgement that refuses to ignore reality. For her, that act of recognition didn't just grant access to a helicopter. It restored her place in a narrative that had tried to exclude her. It turned a moment of rejection into one of validation. And that kind of moment doesn't fade quickly. It redefines identity, not by changing who she was, but by allowing the world to finally see her for who she had always been. Recognition, in its truest form, aligns perception with truth. It ensures that credit lands where it belongs and that value is finally seen instead of assumed away. The reason recognition carries so much power is that it ties directly to dignity. People don't want praise for existing. They want acknowledgement for enduring, striving, achieving. When that acknowledgement comes, it restores balance between effort and respect. It doesn't inflate ego, it heals injustice. And in doing so, it often reignites motivation. Because when people feel seen for the right reasons, they find strength to keep going, to keep contributing, to keep breaking ground, to keep leading by example. Recognition doesn't have to be loud or public to matter. Sometimes it's as subtle as a glance, a nod, a single word of validation from someone who understands the weight of what's been done. That's all it takes to change the direction of a story. The same way one misunderstanding can define a person unfairly, one act of recognition can rewrite that definition entirely. It turns struggle into strength, isolation into belonging, and invisibility into legacy. That's the unseen power of acknowledgement. It doesn't just confirm what exists. It restores what was forgotten and gives it the place it deserves in the story.